the DORK podcast with Rich Keefe. It's the DORK podcast and David. It's the DORK podcast. Hashtag. It's the hashtag DORK podcast.
Thanks for tuning into this very special edition of the hashtag DORK podcast. My name is Rich Keefe. No Davey Eyeballs today, but that is all right. He'll be back next week. Instead, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest right now. It's AEW's. It's Adam Cole, baby. Adam, thanks so much for the time, man. How are you?
Of course, man. I'm great. Hey, that intro was awesome, by the way. It was really cool. But I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
Good. I want to start with the evolution of Bebe. And sure. I heard you on with Chris Jericho, so I'm going to try to not ask a lot of repeat questions. But you were on Jericho's podcast. You talked about how it's a little bit of Jericho saying Bebe. It was a little bit of Joey Matthews or Joey Mercury saying his name. But I'm curious, how long did it take for crowds to fully embrace it?
Minimum 5 years, I think.
Wow.
Because the funny thing is too, because I don't know if I talked about this, but when I first did Adam Cole Bebe, it was never intended to be like a catchphrase or like a thing that people said. It was, again, so I was a heel in a independent promotion called Combat Zone Wrestling, which is like this super violent deathmatch style wrestling. And I didn't do any of that. I was the straight-laced, a regular wrestler. So I was trying to find different ways to get heat with that crowd. Again, aside from the Joey Matthews and Chris Jericho story, I used to just throw my fingers up in the air and yell Adam Cole Bebe. But like so many times during a match, like it would be like 10, 11, 12 times during a match. And people would just boo because it was just this arrogant heel tactic that I used. But what happened was I was in Ring of Honor, and I ended up needing to take like 4 months off to get my shoulder, tricep, and elbow repaired. And when I came back, again, that beautiful thing about pro wrestling, if you're gone for a little bit,
right.
Not too long, but just for a little bit, they actually have a chance to miss you. So when I came back, the fans were really excited, and they knew that I did Adam Cole Bebe. So they started doing it then. And then again, for some reason, it has just completely caught on. And now it's like what I'm known for in a lot of ways.
It really is incredible. And I find myself just at home watching it. And I'm like, I wonder if it's going to be a big Bebe tonight. I wonder if it's going to be a Bebe tonight. And the crowd goes crazy. And it could be somebody who's rooting for Jungle Boy or the Dark Order, and they're still like just caught up in the moment. It's sort of like, Bryan Danielson with Yes, or there's a bunch of them like that. That is incredible. Is there one that stands out to you as the loudest one that you heard?
I would say probably All Out is probably the loudest one. And I don't know if it's because my senses were super heightened at that point because of the surprise aspect of it, but like the genuine reaction and excitement, and then getting into the ring and doing it in Chicago, that one felt the loudest. But again, like I feel like every single week, every town we go to with AEW, it gets louder and louder and louder. So like Arthur Ashe Stadium was unreal. That one was really, really loud. But yeah, I would think, to me, the absolute loudest one was probably All Out in Chicago.
Yeah, that would absolutely was loud. Now, I want to circle back to wrestling, but you are a massive gamer.
Big time, man.
That is why you are perfect for the hashtag Dork podcast, because there's almost two categories. There's people who like video games, and there's people who play Dark Souls. And that is where you come into play. That is
yes.
You. And I've been enjoying your stream, but I am curious, what was your video game? Like, what was your introduction? What were the first games and consoles that you remember playing that got you hooked into video games?
Yeah, man, I'm so excited to talk about this. So actually, my first memory of my entire life, like not of gaming, not of wrestling, of being like my first ever memory as a human being was I was 3 years old. And I remember I got up super early for some reason. And I remember as a kid, my dad then told me I was 3 years old. And I ran downstairs, and my dad was sitting in front of the TV playing Road Rash on the Sega Genesis.
Great game.
Great game to this day. Still a great game. But it was on the old like CRT television. So we thought it was a black bike, but really it was dark blue because you couldn't really tell because of the colors. But he said, I just over and over again said, oh my God, Dad, you got the black bike. No way. No way. Because that was the best one.
Yeah.
So that's my very first memory of anything in my life. So I've been like a casual gamer in a lot of ways for my entire life. But we grew up with the Sega Genesis. And then after that, my dad traded that one in for a Super Nintendo. Then we ended up getting a PlayStation, Nintendo 64, all that fun stuff. But funny enough, I know this isn't necessarily what you asked, but I was so obsessed with wrestling from like 9 years old on that I still loved video games. But actually, my younger brother, Brent, was the one who was how I am with wrestling is how he was with games.
Okay.
And I loved video games. Like I have some of my fondest memories of my childhood are with video games, but I didn't become a gamer until like 2015. It was like when I bought my first console and stuff. Again, like I casually played and I like FF7 and RE2 and Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1, Mario 64, Ocarina of Time on N64, like so many classic games. But like when I became like passionate about video games was 2015. Actually, that was a tangent that had nothing to do with what you asked. But
kidding me? I loved it.
I get excited talking about games, man.
Well, it's funny because I'm a little bit older than you, so for me it was the original Nintendo, and I remember watching my dad beat the original Mario and being like, "This is the most impressive feat I've ever seen."
Right.
I was like, "This is amazing," and so I was hooked from then, and then into the Sega and into all that other stuff.
But what's crazy though, and I want to say this quick though, is like the OG Mario still holds up to this day.
Crazy.
What a game!
Those games they didn't play. Like I'll play Mega Man 2 once a month. I'll pop in Mega Man 2 and play it, or Punch Out, or the original Nintendo games, which is it's really a testament to them.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there a game that you can, if you had to guess, the game you spent the most time playing?
Yes.
Is there one that jumps out?
So absolutely. And it's the game that is responsible for me being so passionate about games and buying my first console and all that stuff. A lot of people are surprised by this because I know diehard Halo fans aren't necessarily super favorable when it comes to this specific one, but Halo 5 is the game responsible for that for me. Because what happened was, I'll never forget it. Me, my brother, and a buddy of mine all lived together in a house, and he said, "Oh man, Halo 5 comes out today. I'm gonna go pick it up." And he went and picked it up and was playing it. And I was bored. I had nothing to do. I was like, "Hey, Brent, do you mind?" I said, "Can I play on your Xbox and play some Halo 5?" He goes, "Yeah, sure." I stayed up till 7 a.m. to beat the campaign. And then I said, "You know what? I think I'm gonna buy my first like with my own money."
Right.
You know, I'd been gifted. We'd had consoles our whole lives, but I was like, I'm going to buy an Xbox One. I bought the Halo 5 edition. I'm not kidding. It's maybe embarrassing to say, but I think I have over 900 hours into Halo 5. I'm not kidding.
No, I believe you. And it's one of those things.
So much time into that game.
Do you like when games keep track of how much time you've played? Because I don't think I need to know that I've spent 50 hours playing as Junkrat in Overwatch. Like, I don't like to keep track like that. I would rather just guess. Like, I know, like Tekken 3, I've spent a million hours, but I don't know the exact number. When I go and look at the Overwatch, I'm like, I've played each character days of my life. I've played. Yeah.
It's a blessing and a curse, right? Yeah. Like part of you is like, "Oh, this is cool. You know, I that's how much I love this game." And then there's another part of you that's like, "Oh man, I got to get out more. What's going?"
Wow, there's a ton of really good wrestling games dating all the way back to the beginning and even to now. My personal favorite was WrestleMania 2000 for the N64.
Won't argue with you on that one.
Is that your favorite one?
Well, between that and No Mercy.
Okay, yeah, those seem to be the two answers that always come back.
They're two incredibly similar games as well. But there is a part of me, again, there's certain aspects of, like, I do feel like No Mercy like honed in on what made WrestleMania 2000 so special and kind of perfected it. But that like initial playtime with WrestleMania 2000 was so legendary that it's like, oh, maybe that one deserves all the credit. But yeah, both of them are so. WCW versus NWO The World,
great one,
really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, a question from the chat. Who did you play with in WrestleMania 2000?
I was a Stone Cold Steve Austin guy all day. all day. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This is a random funny video game story. Is I remember when I bought, and this is no knock on this game because WWE, I'm going to call it that, WWE Attitude on the PlayStation 1.
Okay.
I remember being so excited for it. And we got it, and we had our PS1 ready to go, and I picked Stone Cold, and I was so pumped. And when Stone Cold did his entrance and he put his hands up like this, I cried.
It was
I cried, dude.
Like,
I was like, you couldn't even close the fist.
Not fist, just all the fingers up together.
That's not his entrance. Come on.
Ruined it. I know, but that's the thing. There's little things
so
you'll latch
sad.
onto. The devil's in the details, you know that.
Right.
So you stream, it's twitch.tv/the Chugs.
That is correct.
What is the origin story behind the Chugs?
So, well, in the beginning, when I was trying to come up with a gamer tag, I was like, I want it to be fun or funny or goofy because video games are fun. So there was no part of me that was going to be, not that there's anything wrong with this at all, but I was definitely not going to be the Terminator or something intimidating.
New Blaster 69.
Yeah, right. And I didn't want to be Adam Cole either because I really do separate the two, even though, I am Adam Cole and I am Chugs. I do like the idea of kind of keeping them separate, especially because the characters are, well, one's really me and then one's a character. Like keeping those separate was important to me. But when it came to using Chugs, so really the origin story was, so, if you have a buddy of yours who's like a really, really big dude, and then as a joke, everyone calls him tiny.
Yes.
Is like an ironic type of thing.
Yeah.
That was how I got the nickname Chugs. Because some buddies of mine know that I'm horrible at chugging anything.
Okay.
I'm not kidding. Like water, a sports drink, an adult beverage, it doesn't matter. Like horrible at it. I'm the worst. So they're like, oh, our boy Chugs is going to try to do it. Here we go. So I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I'll go with that one. So that's kind of how it started. Yeah.
Well, and I know you stream with a bunch of guys on there too. You'll have the mixture. I tuned in just in time last week. I think you were playing Halo 3 to see Tyler Breeze teabagging your dead, lifeless body all around there, which I didn't think was necessary. But
absolutely,
I can't recommend the stream enough. Like,
right? What a friend, right?
Yeah,
my
seriously.
God, my God! While I'm gone, take a 4-minute bathroom break, and then. My body's there 20 times.
A million of them. But no,
I love it.
What I like a lot about it too is you don't play just the one game. And I know there are people that have a lot of success doing that, and that's great.
Yeah.
And there's a market for Call of Duty streams, and there's a market for Fortnite or whatever. But every time I've tuned in, I feel like you've been playing a different game, which is great.
Well, I'm glad you said that because it's so true. Like, of course, like some people are very successful with their streams, like in many different ways. But I never got into streaming for the sense of like, how can I make this as successful as possible in the sense of trying to like grow as quickly as possible. To me, it started, and I tell my chat this all the time, who I've formed a like relationship with a lot of these people, is I'm just really passionate about games, and I like the idea of playing a game and then being able to turn over to chat and talk to them about said game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I always have so many different games within the cycle, because there's so many games I'm really passionate about. So not that I would never play one individual game over and over and over again, but I was all about like just playing a bunch of different stuff, like whether it be a game like The Last of Us or a horror game like Resident Evil 2 Remake or Final Fantasy 7 Remake or Halo or what have you. I'm all about just getting to play and experience a bunch of different stuff, because I do think pro wrestling and video games are my two favorite forms of entertainment for sure. So
does it help you a lot too to have like the two interests, and every once in a while they'll cross over, but to have them separate? Like for me personally, I do a sports talk radio show during the week, but then I also do this podcast where I talk about movies and TV and video games and comic books and stuff.
That's awesome.
And it's great to have like the two passions. I feel like it's got to be very similar for you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because you have a lot of people, especially early on, like initially with the Twitch stream, there were a lot of people who checked it out strictly because they knew me from wrestling. Yeah. But as time has gone on, it's been really cool. Like I would say 80% of the people know me from wrestling,
Mhm.
but there's like a 20% crew that is like, wait, this guy's a wrestler? No
That's
way.
cool.
And that to me is almost more rewarding.
Mhm.
Not that I don't appreciate the support on both platforms, whether it be wrestling and gaming, but it's really, really cool to kind of dive into that world as almost an unknown in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So yeah, for sure.
Well, it's going back to wrestling. I feel like
Yeah.
wrestling and stand-up comedy in a way are similar, only in the point where you hear about these stories of guys who made it, and they were in the early stages of their career with other guys. So like you would know a lot of early wrestlers that hadn't broken through yet, just like stand-up comics. Like now all of these like Netflix specials and everything, but they also remember performing in front of 10 people with another
Yep.
guy later on. Is that a thought process that you have when you're in the independents early on in your career that, yeah, one day I'm going to make it to the big time? And are you having those conversations with the other guys back there?
Yeah, so early on, I was like obsessed with. I remember like my first year or two, I was like, yeah, my goal is someday to main event WrestleMania, and it was like, again, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was just so far from where I was
Right.
that I realized pretty early on it's better to set like smaller goals for myself and kind of enjoy the ride because I do love pro wrestling. So again, like the fact that I trained at Combat Zone Wrestling at CZW and then wrestled there, that was a really cool thing for me. So it was important for me to go, hey, this is really cool. I'm in this best of the best tournament, or I'm on the Cage of Death show,
Mhm.
or getting to wrestle at Ring of Honor and wrestle on iPay-per-view for them, or going to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla or wrestling in Japan. I'm like, I have to enjoy these steps of like where my eventual goal is. And then my goal kind of changed like as time had gone on. For me, like again, after like a year or two of understanding the different goals that I had, my first goal was just to be able to make a living as a wrestler. I remember that was really important because I had a part-time job at a retirement home,
Oh,
and I
wow.
taught like kids swim lessons during the week.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And then I would wrestle on the weekends and travel. And that job was great because they were so understanding of my schedule. But long story short, I tell other young wrestlers this anytime I do seminars or anything. It's so important to set smaller goals for yourself and not hyper focus on this eventual big dream that you have, because so much of it is out of your control. Like you can only go in and go, hey, I'm going to have the best match I possibly can. I'm going to cut the best promo I possibly can, and take that kind of day by day and enjoy the process and enjoy the journey. And the older I get, the more I'm understanding that. But yeah.
And it's going to be interesting when you talk to wrestling fans because some of them probably know every single thing about your career. And
So
then
cool.
others are like, oh, this is a new AEW wrestler.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, he's new in NXT. It's like, oh, he has good chemistry with Kyle O'Reilly. I wonder why. But like, they
Right.
don't realize that you guys have been wrestling with and against each other for years and years. But like, people pick your career up at all different times.
Exactly. Yeah, it literally happens all the time. Like you just said, I definitely have gained a bunch of new fans as of 6 weeks ago because of joining AEW. Like I can't tell you how many people were like, "Yeah, I heard about this guy in NXT, but I've never seen him before. Oh, he's pretty good," or
Yeah.
what have you. So it is crazy how people kind of pick up on your career at different points. And then I'll do a signing somewhere, and someone will go, "Hey, I watched you at Eastern Championship Wrestling in 2008 for your 4th match ever, and I've been a fan of yours ever since." And I'm like, "Oh my god, that's amazing."
It's crazy.
So, yeah,
It's crazy. And along the way, you've been in a lot of factions.
a
How
lot.
many factions have you been in?
Oh my god. I was in the Kingdom and Ring of Honor. I was in the Bullet Club. In ROH New Japan, I was in Undisputed Era, Mount Rushmore, and Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Obviously the Elite now. So yeah, quite a few.
I love factions though, and I think again,
Me
it's like
too.
from our era. Like I grew up on it. Like you needed the DX and the NWO and the Heart Foundation, and like I thought it created stars. I really am a big fan of it.
I do too. Yeah, I love it as well.
Now I don't know how to explain this, but for a number of years, NXT was definitely my just favorite brand in any wrestling, and
Yeah.
your whole time there, the few years leading up to when you were there, I just thought the matches were the best. And talking with other wrestling buddies of mine, there'd be the takeover, and then there'd be whatever the WWE pay-per-view is the next night. And then on Monday, we're only talking about the NXT matches. Any idea why that is? I'm sure you guys are super competitive about it, but it's a weird thing to me because there'd be certain guys that one year would be fighting in the takeovers, and then the next year they're on the bigger card and the matches just weren't as good. I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, I do think to some extent, I mean, there's so many factors to go into. Like number one, again, and I stand by this, but that roster was stacked. I mean, you had a lot of really, really talented dudes who were trying to make an impression and trying to show the world on the biggest stage they had ever had how good they were. So I think that created a really exciting atmosphere. Second of all, the live audience who was there, I've said this before, and I think it's a big reason AEW is so successful, is the people who buy a ticket to that show and show up, they want the show to be good. They go there with the intention of going, this show is going to rule. I can't wait to watch these matches. And it creates this like exciting atmosphere that not only creates this cool magic within the audience, but it does create a different feeling with the wrestlers as well. So then that's how the magic happens in a lot of ways. But I do think at the end of the day, in a lot of ways, the fans looked at NXT as like not the little engine that could, but like this new brand that was starting that they felt responsible for its growth, which I think is so important. I think the fact that the roster kept growing and they kept signing these indie darlings or independent stars in a lot of ways, they felt responsible for this massive growth of NXT becoming like a legit third brand for the company. And AEW has that same kind of passion in the sense of people feel like they are responsible for AEW's growth over these past 2 years. And they are like the fact that the fans are so amped, so jacked up, so ready to go and ready to enjoy these matches. It makes it really, really special. So
yeah, I think it's a good call on the fans.
Yeah.
I think they definitely added.
Fans are vital to it.
And you guys had the crazy matches, whether it's with the ladder matches or the War Games matches, and like the stuff you guys were doing was just off the charts. I'm also curious, the series of matches you had with Johnny Gargano are some of the best in NXT history. Once you have the first match, and then you're like, all right, we're gonna do it again. What are those conversations like to try to one up what was already a 6-star match?
Man, it'd be so stressful. Specifically with a guy like Johnny, because me and Johnny Gargano are really close. I just talked to him today. So he's a great friend of mine. And we only wrestled one time prior to our first one in Brooklyn. And it was in 2010 for Evolve Wrestling for Gabe Sapolsky. So like, God, 8 years or whatever had gone by, or 9 years. And we had been saying like, it'd be really cool to be able to wrestle in a feature match on NXT. So we had the first one, and fortunately people really enjoyed it. There were a lot of eyes on it because of it being WrestleMania weekend and stuff. But yeah, going into the second one, incredibly stressful. Going like, how in the world are we going to top this one? But again, the nice thing that happens is when you have matches like that, there are like certain little story arcs that you create without even realizing it. So actually putting it together wasn't as difficult as you would think. It also helps that, again, I'm in there with a guy like Johnny, who is just a genius when it comes to that stuff. So yeah, we just said, all right, let's do another one, and we'll see how it goes.
They were great, and it's great to go back and rewatch them too. All right, let me get you out here on this one. Looking at the AEW roster, there are a million possibilities for future opponents and future feuds. I have 3 off the top of my head, and I would just like to get your reaction if this were to come at some point. Adam Cole versus Malachi Black.
I love the idea of that, because we really only had one serious high-profile match within NXT, and it was an Extreme Rules match that a lot of people really enjoyed. So to get the chance to go toe-to-toe with him again within AEW would be pretty cool.
Adam Cole versus CM Punk.
That's my dream match. Yeah. I've said before, and I'll say it 1,000 times, if I had a personal, I'm not saying this is the definitive Mount Rushmore, but if I had a personal Mount Rushmore as far as wrestlers who have influenced me, CM Punk is on that list. He made me focus on promos. He introduced me to independent wrestling. I never in a million years thought I'd get the chance to maybe step into the ring with him. Now the fact that that's a possibility, I'm going to be real sad if I don't ever wrestle CM Punk.
I think the fans would be too. And then last one, I know factions never break up in wrestling. They never break up. Adam Cole versus Kenny Omega.
I know a lot of people have been wondering if that's going to happen. But right now, I don't see it as a possibility, but you never know. It's pro wrestling. Never say never.
All right, Adam Cole, AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, AEW Rampage on Friday, and of course, streaming all the time, twitch.tv/the Chugs. Adam, this was awesome, man. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.